We're now live on YouTube, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, committee, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Jamie Lane. I'm the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny here at Northampton Borough Council. So I'll start the meeting off with any apologies. I've received apologies from Councillor Aziz, Councillor Eales, Councillor Meredith, and I'm sure you'll all join with me in wishing Councillor Meredith a speedy recovery. I believe he's out of hospital now, so hopefully it won't be too much longer until he's back with us. Any other apologies?
None, Chair.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the meeting of the 7th of September 2020. Are you all in agreement with those minutes? Good, thank you. Deputations and public addresses. Robin Burgess wants to speak on our overview and scrutiny report on food poverty. So I'll ask him to speak just before that item. Any more members of the public wishing to speak?
Mr. Foster said he might speak, but he hasn't joined the meeting, so it's quite possible he may be viewing the meeting on YouTube instead.
Okay, well, if he wants to join us, he's very welcome. Declarations of interest, including any whipping? No. Okay, then I'll move on to
Councillor Smith indicating.
Councillor Smith.
Just in case it's relevant at any point, I'm a member of Northampton Partnership Homes Board.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so item 5 then, the child exploitation, sexual exploitation scrutiny report. This is, I'm going to hand over to Phil Harris and Councillor Hibbett to give us an update on this. But I think it is more or less completed. There's just 2 little items are outstanding, which is connected with the training, and I think they're probably going to tell us that the training session is taking place at the end of this month. But I'll hand over to Phil, if I may, to give us an update on the report.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. So I'm having problems with my internet, so you'll not get disconnected. So yes, taken a while to complete the actions, but as we said at the last meeting, there were just a few more to. So all of the actions are completed apart from recommendation 8 and recommendation 10, but they're partially completed. So we do indeed have some training sessions on safeguarding and child sexual exploitation arranged for the 18th of November and the 25th of November. And by then we'll be issuing details of the online training that's available to councillors on safeguarding and CSE. So that's why it's partial, but it will be available for next week.
Okay, thank you very much, Phil. Councillor, add to that.
Just to encourage everybody to attend the training. I shall be there, and I hope lots and lots of councillors will attend.
Yes, I'm sure the invite was sent out today or very recent. I remember seeing it quite recently. Okay, any questions on this report? I would just like to add my thanks to Councillor Meredith, who chaired this report initially, and I'm sure he'll be pleased to know that once we get the training over and done with at the end of the month, everything would have been completed. So thank you very much for that. Oh, Emma, you want to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Just really briefly, I just wondered whether we can see there's so much work has gone into this report and then the actions thereafter. But I just wondered that given the time since the original report was done, whether some of the online information should be refreshed, or we should make sure that we are sending that information back out to schools and to any partners. I just couldn't see anything, and forgive me if I've missed it, but anything within the document about that kind of ongoing follow-up, that continual refresh to make sure that we stay on top of the actions.
Yeah, certainly at the last meeting, Vicky Rockall talked about the work that she was doing with particular, and we know that the police and the RISE team are continuing to do that. But, we'll hopefully pick that up as well in training, and you'll see what changes have been made over those period of time.
Okay, Zoe?
Hello, yeah, thank you. Just a couple of things. One was around the training. It's really positive that we're having this training in a couple of weeks now, but obviously this report came out in 2017, so I was just wondering if there's anything we could have done to implement some of this a little bit sooner. And also just around Northampton Partnership Homes is down as completed, and we're informed that all of the officers have training. It says that the board members haven't had any training, and I'm wondering if this is something that we can follow up.
Okay. I mean, perhaps as a board member yourself, Councillor Smith, perhaps that's something you would want to raise within the board, and I think that would be a really positive thing. That is for the Northampton Partnership Homes to determine who they train, but encourage that. And I think we had discussed before that some of the actions for various reasons took a bit longer than we intended. However, as soon as the scrutiny review was completed, work was going on with officers on the agency basis to continue the good work that had started those years ago.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so moving on then to the next item, which is the performance and monitoring reports, item 6. You would have been sent the latest performance report. Is there anything within that report the committee would like further information on the areas we're sort of not performing in? Something that I had looked at was on page 19, which is the new businesses locating to the waterside, the enterprise zone, and the number of jobs created. Now, it does say on the report that this is the last time that we would receive those figures because the project is reaching a conclusion. But it would be interesting to find out how successful it's been and what the uptake has and how many jobs it has created, if you're with me on that, committee.
Councillor Smith is indicating to speak.
Hey, Chloe?
Hello, yeah, I agree on that one. I'm just looking at the one about the service requests responded to within 5 working days. That's been, obviously for the majority of this time, has been read. I think that seems to be linked to COVID, but I think as this looks to be set for the long haul, we need to think about how we manage to get normal operations and things continuing sort of while involved with COVID related business regulation work, because we need to make sure that other things don't drop by the wayside. Now it looks set for the long haul.
Okay, we get a report from Councillor Hallam on that. Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Chair. It's the item surrounding the CS14A. The decision to close the one-stop shop obviously was made. I'm just wondering whether we need to have an update on what provisions are in place to make sure that we're reaching the right people and we're getting to those who do need help as a result of that closure, and that everybody is aware of the services that are available for people and how our teams are still talking to people from home or from different locations.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
And sorry, Chair, thank you for saying that you agree with that. But then I think as a rule, there's quite a lot of the items that say this may be as a result of COVID. And I think I echo Councillor Smith's comment. That isn't, it's not a criticism. Clearly COVID's had a huge impact, but how long do we say we allow that to be the impact, and what are we going to do to make sure that we are reducing the risk of the impacts that are being made by that?
Absolutely. Good. Okay then, thank you very much, committee, for that. Moving on to item 7 then, the scrutiny reports.
Councillor Kilby-Shaw's indicating, sorry, Chair.
Sorry, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So it's item ESC04, the percentage of household waste recycled and composted. So that's on page 17.
Yeah.
So the description says that there's been a reduction due to COVID-19. I was wondering if we could have a bit more information about the specifics around that, because it is quite a significant reduction.
Okay, absolutely. On to that.
Thank you,
Anything
Chair.
else? Okay, lovely, thank you. In that case, I will move on to item 7, and I call on Robin Burgess, who wants to address the committee on our food poverty report. Hello, Robin.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me to speak to this item. I just wanted to make sure everyone was appraised of all the changes that have happened since the bulk of the work of the Scrutiny Committee was completed, because everything has changed in terms of COVID. The key points to make are that poverty has dramatically increased, of course, during COVID, and as a result, the demand upon food banks and food support agencies has dramatically increased, up to 3 times as much as it was when this report was substantially written and all the submissions were made. So we are facing a very, very different situation now than we were then. In the time of COVID, right through until now, there's been an enormous amount of cooperation and collaboration between the voluntary sector, in particular, working with some support from all of the different councils, including NCC. And for those who aren't aware, we are, of course, administering a very large grant, 300,000 from DEFRA as a group amongst partners. So all those things need to be taken into account when you do come on to considering the recommendations of the report. And in particular, what we would stress is that a lot of that has been achieved solely by the voluntary sector working together. We have managed to do a great deal without very much external engagement at all, although we work considerably closely with some key people, and all from the council has been very helpful to that, amongst others. But essentially, this has been a voluntary sector-led initiative. And we would hope that in terms of the recommendations that are made, there is strong consideration to recognising that degree of work that has already taken place, and that rather than try and work across the efforts of the voluntary sector, this should be seen as a bit of co-production where we work together. We very much welcome the recommendation. I think they're generally incredibly positive. But obviously, this is a very fluid time. Things are changing. More money was announced yesterday by the government. We don't know where we will be in a few weeks' time. The point is, it should be a collaborative, co-productive effort, voluntary sector and the local authority and the new Western Country working together to address the issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Robin. Okay, well, before we go into the report, I'd just like to thank those councillors taking part in producing this report, especially to Councillor Meredith, who chaired it, but also to our co-optees, Paul Foster and Clive, for really helping us in creating this report, and to all those people who came and gave evidence to help support it. I'm sure many of you want to speak on it, but before I do, I just want to draw the committee's attention to the recommendations. There are quite a number of recommendations, so don't intend to go through every single one individually. They're there for you to look at, but I will be taking this report to Cabinet on the 16th of December. Now, timescales are quite tight for this, so I would ask my first update at our meeting on the 11th of January. Now, if committee approves the report tonight, there is nothing to stop the Cabinet start reading the report and start acting on those recommendations prior to their meeting on the 16th of December. We've had scrutiny reports that have gone to Cabinet, and I've sat there and they've come straight back to me and said all the recommendations have been completed. I don't expect all the recommendations to be completed by the 16th of December, but they can start working on them. So that's my thoughts. Councillor Roberts, you were the co-chair of this committee, or the deputy chair. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I've got lots I'd like to add, Jamie, but I wasn't the co-chair of the committee. Catherine was, yeah.
Sorry, I've got your face on the screen. That's fine. Sorry, Councillor Russell. Sorry, Catherine.
Thank you very much. I've been impressed with the recommendations that have been put forward, and I've got fingers crossed that Cabinet will say, yes, of course, this is what we're going to do. There's a number of issues that have come up since the recommendations were done, and that is to do around the distribution of vouchers for holiday food, to combat holiday hunger, which has recently hit the headlines. And I'm very pleased that the powers that be have decided to go ahead and fund the school vouchers. I think that's been a huge step forward. The other thing that has come through quite clearly in many ways is the living conditions in which people are now living. A lot of people have been are facing eviction. A lot of people are finding themselves in different accommodation. Because of COVID, that accommodation has become increasingly compromised due to the difficulties around the virus, and in HIMOs, the lack of space and the lack of facilities, individual facilities for families. So I think there's, I don't want to go down a cul-de-sac with this, but I think there's more to be done on it. I'd like to thank Tracy very much for putting all of these recommendations together, and I'd welcome any other comments from other members of the committee.
I think you're quite right there, Catherine. It's one of those things with any scrutiny report. As soon as you start investigating, you open up different cans of worms, and it can go on and on and on. And I think that what we need to do is make sure that we go forward into the new unitary with those ideas and visions, and influence them as well. Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on this? Councillor Robert.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to echo Catherine's comments with regards to Tracy's input and Geraldine's input, the other officer as well. Their knowledge and their connections were really useful to us gathering the data. We saw some superior contributions from experts, and I think what the report does, or the recommendations do, is offer us an opportunity to really coordinate and harness that expertise and get the right people around the table. I learned so much from the panel and having those right people around the table, and I think we have to make sure that we harness that expertise and build on the work that has already been done. I just wanted to touch on the fact that the report references a living wage employer and a living wage town and a sustainable food town. It's obviously quite apt that it's Living Wage Week, and today we've seen the new living wage figures being released, and I think the report shows that there's about 5.5 million people that earn less than the living wage. You know, our carers, our shop workers, the people that are keeping things going during COVID and the pandemic that we've seen, are the people who are facing the most significant hardship as a result of that impact. And I think we can't stress enough the importance of bringing up living standards and the basic income in our tackle of food poverty. It's not just about food aid. We've got to meet the immediate needs, but we've got to deal with the long-term problem. And I also just wanted to add that one thing I do believe we can afford to do as a result of this report is do it all again immediately. Now, some people might say, well, we could do that every single time, but we have been faced with such significant changes since we originally embarked on this. We are in a different place. Robin just talked about 3 times as much aid as was before. There are so many groups across our town providing support for people. They were in difficulty before. Let's not pretend they weren't. They were in difficulty before COVID. But COVID seems to have allowed this openness. It's removed some of that perceived stigma, and people, including council representatives, are being more open and honest about the problem. And we've got to harness that. It's okay to not be okay, to coin a different phrase for a different topic, but it's okay to ask for support, and it's okay to want to provide that support to people. The community support we've seen across the town has been the biggest act of social solidarity that I've ever seen or witnessed, and long may that continue. But we've got to ensure as a council that the voluntary sector and generally the residents who have pulled together to support their neighbours are supported in doing this, both with significant support from the borough, the county, and all other experts in the field. And I'm sorry if I went on a little bit there, but I think it's so important that we move on these recommendations and we harness what we've achieved already.
Absolutely. You don't need to apologise for your passion, Councillor Roberts. That's what makes Scrutiny so much enjoyable, and that's what we bring to this committee is our passion, and that's what makes our reports so brilliant. That's, and Tracy as well, putting them together. Anybody else wants to speak on this? No. Okay then. Oh, sorry.
We have Councillor Smith and Councillor Russell.
Councillor Smith, and I'll come back to Councillor Russell to kind of sum up before we accept the recommendations.
Thanks, Chair. Just to sort of do my hobby horse around the connected working, especially as we go forward to the unitary. It's been the outcome of almost every scrutiny panel I've been involved with over the last few years has been the importance of joined at working. So it's no use looking at food banks without looking at housing, as Catherine said, when you've got HMOs and the limitations that puts on people's ability to cook healthy food and affordable food, and all of the, and particularly in COVID, that's become even more the case. And it's just thinking through, making sure that all of these things are added up and that we understand how they all link into one another, and that we encourage the sort of the new unitary authority to look at how you link up all those issues and how you improve communication in all those areas, so that we've got the full picture, not just looking at everything in isolation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Russell?
Thank you for letting me speak again, Jamie. I think Emma's idea is a really good one, but perhaps not redo it again, but redo where we are now. And we would need to have all of the strands pulled together so that we have a very focused, almost telescopic view of what the situation is in our town. But we also, in the run-up to the West North Hants, need to start including other areas of the West North Hants Authority, so that when the elections are done and when West North Hants is actually running, we really need to have, because this isn't going to go away. There's food poverty, COVID, housing, all of these things are not going to go away. And we need to know where we are at the start of the West North Hants Authority and where we want to be, given all of the community work and the input from various specialists, so that we can draw together all of their expertise and make sure that there's no family finding itself, that would be my aim, no family finding itself in a situation where its dignity and quality of life is being compromised.
Okay, I'm sure we all agree with that, Catherine. Okay, committee, do you agree to recommendations within the report? Great, thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Tracy, for putting it all together as always. I will be presenting this to Cabinet on the 16th of December. Please feel free to come along as well and have your chance to speak and support the report. Thank you. Okay then, so moving on to the next report, which is the gangs and knife crime. Once again, we've got a of the recommendations here for you. Councillor Walker, are you here?
Unfortunately, Councillor Walker's connection went again and he's had to leave the meeting. He said he can't get back in.
Okay, so Councillor Walker was the chair of this overview scrutiny committee, and there are similarities. There are similarities to other reports that we've done with the recommendations. Councillor Jane Birch was the deputy chair, so she's not on our panel, and there's myself, Catherine, and Aziz who chaired it. But things come out, and it's around community. It's around people working together. So if you go to page 77 of the report, which is 185 of your report pack. If Councillor Walker doesn't come back, I'll just talk through the recommendations that we came up with, which were around that the community safety manager is in charge and work with all the relevant organisations and agencies so they can collaborate and enhance joint bids for funding in respect of dealing with gangs and knife crime. The Northampton Borough Council worked with other agencies and groups in the town to coordinate the youth provision for the borough. So again, there's lots of things there about coming together and making facilities for the youth to help and support them. Multi-agency regarding issues related to gangs and knife crime, to bring all multi-agencies working together to talk. And this is what sort of Councillor Roberts is saying, you know, about with the food poverty to some degree, you know, people working together. And it's the same with the gangs and knife crime. We've also recommended that a meeting with community safety team, NBC and community courtyard is convened regarding involving its work, and that there's a huge facility of the young people needed as well, that all potential funding streams are investigated so that youth clubs and other facilities for young people are brought back into the town. Funding is the core for all activities, cost money, and it's ensured that the costs should not be passed on to the young people. So that should be funded for them. In recognising that the most difficult area appears to be liaising with families, then safe to do so. The community safety team has a stand and family fun day or a similar event, and it's organised remotely. And then best practices, that the community safety team liaises with officers at Merseyside regarding their best practice initiatives in dealing with gangs and knife crime, and that aim to mirror such initiatives in Northampton. So again, it's talk about that working together and providing support and facilities for the youth. Is there anything you want to add, Catherine, on this? I know you were very good in the committee.
Sorry, are you saying Catherine?
Yes, sorry, Catherine.
Yeah. Yes, I think one of the things that I miss, and I'm sure it's a question of work and is actually getting feedback from the community safety about outcomes, specific outcomes that have been achieved at the different events that are being held either by the police or jointly with the borough or just within the community safety group, which I know Vicky Rockwell works at, and Councillor King does tend to speak at full council about some of the activities that the community safety gets up to, but it would be really useful to have a much more detailed report come back so that we know that any recommendations or any ideas that we want to put forward in this report are working and that we're achieving it.
Yeah, totally agree. Anybody want to make any comments or questions on this report? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I have a really brief comment. It kind of coincides with what I've said already in respect to the food poverty. You touched on it at the beginning and Catherine's touched on it there. I think there's a real gap in knowledge base. We don't provide information on things that are being done. We don't coordinate or communicate that information. We don't necessarily, and maybe it's just me, but I don't think it is, because I've spoken to others around it. We don't know when something's being achieved by NBC. NBC might sit on a committee. They might be part of a community partnership. They might be doing this particular course of action. We might be working with our PCSOs. But it isn't necessarily publicised. And I'm not talking about press releases. I mean, education. We're not educated on what's happening, and we're not always educated on how to educate our residents on what's happening. And I think there's a bit of a missing link there, whether it be training or resources. I don't know exactly what the answer is. I just feel like in both of the reports, we've got this missing link of we don't know exactly what we're doing to combat this.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, on behalf of Councillor Walker, I'd like to thank all those taking part in the report. Tracy for putting it all together, as always. And as I said, I'll be presenting this report to Cabinet on the 16th of December again, and then we'll wait their answers to our recommendations. All okay with that? Okay. Moving on then, next item on the agenda, which is items for potential pre-decision scrutiny. I know of nothing that is coming up that we need to scrutinise. We're working well, many of us, on the West Northants scrutiny panel, and I think things are starting shifting over to there now. But what I think we need to be thinking about is having a meeting, either the February meeting or an extra meeting in March, and just tying the loose ends together and really see what is outstanding in our work, in our recommendations, and how Cabinet are planning to act on those recommendations, put them into force before vesting day. And if anything is outstanding, then what happens? Do we pass it on to the West Northants Scrutiny Committee to make sure it's all takes place, or I hope that our Cabinet here in Northampton Borough Council will have everything sorted by vesting day? But as it's taken some 2.5 years on some reports, I'm not confident that everything will get done. So there may be a few loose ends there that need tidying up. Would you agree with me on that? Councillor Roberts.
Thanks, Jamie. I don't disagree with you. Wholeheartedly agree with that. We need an update on where things are. I had 2 points that I thought were relevant. One is we normally get a report to full council on where we're up to with motions and how they've been progressed. I wonder whether or not, as a kind of a catch-all exercise, we need to have an update into scrutiny as to where we are with those items as well, because a lot of the motions lead into the reports or have generated the need for a report. So I think that's the first thing that's important. And then I think there are a couple of items around housing that we've discussed previously that we were expecting updates back from. And it's not so much pre-decision scrutiny, but just making sure that they've moved on, or they are going to be handed over in a particular format to the authority, and how that handover will take place.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We do have updates on our recommendations, but sometimes they're slower than others, and we just need to gear them up a bit to bring us those decisions before vesting day. Yes, you're quite right, there are reports outstanding which we need to see. That's why we may need the extra meeting in March or the end of February. Catherine, did you have something you wanted to say on that?
Yes, thank you. I think maybe what I was going to say is repeating what Emma said, but in a different kind of way. I feel quite anxious about, hopefully, whoever is on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the West Northants, how it's all going to be pulled together from the different districts and boroughs, because we drive it really hard here in Northampton. You're saying that the actual West Northants Overview and Scrutiny Committee is starting to gain some traction and some momentum. And I'm just wondering how Daventry and South Northants, whether they have Overview and Scrutiny meetings, how all of that is going to be pulled together so that nobody loses out and we're all aware of what's going on in the different districts and boroughs.
Yeah, we do have a meeting actually, like our work programme. We've got a meeting coming up soon. I can't remember the exact date, but it's sometime this month. It may be next week even. I haven't got my diary to hand, but we've got a meeting coming up to look at our work programme, and this will be brought up in that.
Sorry, Jamie, who's we?
The Committee on West Northants.
Okay, and is that publicly? Can we join up with that?
I think it's just a planning meeting at this stage. Okay. I believe it's open to the public. Councillor Smith.
No, I didn't have my hand up, Chair.
Sorry.
Might have been the cat.
Yeah, sorry, I've just been glanced down. It's Thursday, November the 26th, and it's an informal workshop. So it's just the committee. It's an informal workshop, but that's the kind of thing I'm going to raise. It's how the scrutiny will work as well. Okay, anybody else got anything they want to say? No. Okay. Okay, there are no urgent items. So I thank you all for your attendance. And I'll close the meeting. Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone. Stay safe.